Hello, I'm Thomas Hare, Chief Content Officer of the Performance-Driven Marketing Institute, a not-for-profit trade association that serves companies in the performance and direct consumer marketing world. Welcome to the latest episode of Take 20, created by the PDMI's Brand Response Council. These 20 or so minute live conversations featuring leaders in the performance marketing world, speaking about the hottest topics in the industry, are scheduled twice a month. Before we get to today's conversation, a quick housekeeping note. We'll be addressing any questions from the audience at the end of today's session, but you don't have to wait to ask them. Find that questions tab on your control panel, and you can type and send your question in. We'll be collecting them. We'll try to get to as many as possible in the final moments of the episode. Today, we welcome this group of PDMI members and leaders for a conversation about the current state of CTV attribution. As more performance brands launch campaigns on CTV outlets, those brands and the agencies who serve them are still trying to suss out just how to analyze and attribute success in the medium. Transparency remains an issue for marketers used to the clear outcomes presented by traditional linear TV, and questions about ad fraud in some areas still remain. Yes, the viewers are there, but how can D2C brands know they're reaching them? Well, Brand Response Council Chair and Take 20 host Chris Foster of Modern Postcard is here today, along with Modus Direct's Carey Chase, LiveRamp's Franceschini, and Blockboard's Matt Wasserlauf for a conversation about how CTV attribution is working today and how it can improve as the outlet matures. Welcome to all of you. Chris, take it away.
Great, thank you so much, and so glad to welcome all of you for episode 107 for the Take 20s, and thanks to these fantastic guests. Like Tom mentioned, when we talk about attribution for years, there's a maxim that all channels have claim, and that's appropriate when dealing with an on-the-channel program. But you have to have the measures of attribution within those channels, because those things give the marketers and brands more confidence in performance and the willingness to spend and test in those specific channels. For Google and Meta networks, display ads, PPC, retargeting are really clear in terms of cost per clicks, even cost per acquisition, if you can line up your POS or e-commerce systems into those campaigns. The question is about what is CTV and how we determine these customer actions when someone sees an ad. So Carey, I'm going to start with you. When you introduce CTV to a client's media mix, firstly, what kind of expectations are you setting when it comes to attribution?
So thanks, Chris, and it was great to be here with this great tech panel. So what we do a lot of times is most of the campaigns that we work on will be both linear and CTV, and you have that kind of comparison. And what we need to do is be able to communicate that CTV is definitely different, and we will tell them that usually the results take a little bit more time. It's a lot of times they're very familiar with digital media, so we liken it to that type of response in terms of how the results are coming in, and it's going to be a little bit different from linear. So that's usually the biggest thing and biggest takeaway that we try to make sure that we're communicating with our clients. What we have found over the years, and again, a lot of times what we do is kind of geared to an older audience, is we find that also the call to actions, phone numbers, they just don't seem to translate as much, and it's always kind of confounding because people are just viewing it, and it's not like they sit there, it's like, oh, I can call when I see it on a linear presentation, but not on a CTV. That really is not the case. But what we do find is that it takes a little bit more time, but we are seeing it grow just as we're seeing more and more viewers get their television from the CTV distribution.
Sure. So it's interesting because you talk about, some of those metrics, and, there's of course, the ratings on linear and the impressions, but there's impression measurements on CTV. Are these things where you're talking to clients about the number of impressions that they should expect?
Well, we kind of talk about how it really gets down to the one-on-one, and it's different, and how it differs from the linear, where it's just one spot that's spread and that's cast that wide net, where the one-on-one, and you aren't really able to dig into the programming. When we work with our DSPs, as you're able to do that on the linear side. So it's the impression, what we tend to do is go for the lowest impression. It kind of takes a page out of the playbook that we do for linear, for performance, is looking at the lowest rate. And here we look at the lowest CPM, and we start there. And then if we feel the need that there needs to be more data, or it needs to be geo-targeted, or if there are some other areas where data is necessary and that increases the cost. But at the end of the day, it still comes down to the lowest cost per in whatever side of the fence you want to play in.
Sure. Well, you mentioned data, and I want to jump to Tara on this one. So the data links to map a customer journey helps us see who goes to websites and receive emails and purchase, and you connect all those, those signals. When Tara, from your perspective, do you think about a last touch attribution model, or is there something that kind of reveals more of the combination of channels, or the best combination of channels that you can kind of decipher from the patterns?
Right. Cross-channel attribution has always been a challenge. It's difficult to determine which channel or combination of channels is truly driving the most conversions. And as more touch points emerge within CTV and commerce media networks, this becomes increasingly more important for advertisers to overcome. But advertisers can employ a multi-touch attribution model that analyzes consumer touch points across various channels. By using advanced analytics and machine learning algorithms, advertisers can identify the most effective channels and optimize marketing campaigns to better see these conversions. But effective MTA often requires data and advanced analytics capabilities to produce these accurate results. So this is where cleanroom tech can kind of enable that data collaboration between CTV platforms and that first-party data. From LiveRamp's perspective, utilizing a tool like our standardized insights in the LiveRamp cleanroom, brands can quickly assess and deploy these media performance metrics like audience overlaps, optimal frequency, and last touch attribution from premium publishers and CTV data, while reducing the workload that kind of is often associated with attaining this type of information.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Can you imagine with all the channels, all these various Excel sheets, and some poor 22-year-old who just got hired as a data analysis associate to get 12 to 15 different spreadsheets to try to connect all those connect.
I was a master at Excel, but
that's hilarious. So I think what's interesting about, you're talking about multi-touch attribution, and a lot of that also has to do with the trust in the impressions and the data that you're getting. So Matt, from what we understand with Blockboard, you guys use a blockchain approach for ad delivery, and that ensures full transparency and no wasted impressions. Can you also, A, is that true? And B, can you also use that for more accurate matchbacks and performance attribution to those IP addresses?
Yes. So the answer to the first question is yes. We use blockchain for those two purposes. First, we use Ethereum blockchain and smart contracts to pre-verify every ad call. So we make sure that we're actually reaching the right human being. That's a big factor in all this. And then secondly, we use the blockchain because what ultimately the blockchain is an immutable ledger. So everything is there and it's printed and it cannot be changed. And what we've gotten to do, a bad habit in online digital, is we move spreadsheets back and forth and we modify them and change them and take good out and put something else in. And we've removed all of that. So we've really removed the toxicity out of the supply chain in digital. Blockchain has enabled us to do that.
Roger. And so I guess the question that I would have for you, Matt, as a follow-up, are you as Blockboard looking at attribution, or is that something that is given to the agencies or some other third party?
For the first 4 or 5 years of our company, we used everyone else's attribution platform. But we were getting so good at driving leads and sales that we were asked to run a lot of our business on cost per acquisition, and to make sure that we were seeing an absolute one-to-one that we were ultimately going to get paid on, we built our own. We saw a common gap across all providers from iSpot to TV Squared. They just weren't picking up the identifiers off of these new CTV apps, like the Maxes and the Paramount Pluses. So we built Block Connect. which is our attribution platform. Often our clients will use it alongside these others, which is just fine. There isn't a lot of daylight between them. But we are seeing the one-to-one from Paramount Plus to sale. And that's the key for us, is we do understand we were never cookie based, much like a lot of these other attribution platforms are. We were always built in app. And so we have our own platform, but we're happy to use others as well.
That's great. And I guess Carey, I'll ask you then, as agencies kind of figuring out these various channels for your clients and relying on your own attribution models, perhaps the Blockboard, attribution, the Block Connect platform. When you look at CTV, do you think of it as a component of a campaign's overall return on ad spend, or are you looking at it specifically of the return on ad spend just for CTV, or maybe both?
We kind of do both, but primarily we do separate them because we have, as I said originally, we're still seeing the results for CTV lag for a lot of our clients compared to linear. So we don't want to discourage clients from embracing this. We want to give it time to grow because the performance media, 2 or 3 weeks, and we're moving on to either a different channel or station. So we kind of treat it like it was its own channel, that it's its own entity. But we do, at the end, also can throw everything together, and so that the client is not sitting there having to pull their hair out and kind of figure it out. But we optimize separately because we're working with DSPs, and our attribution is different. We use Innovid and TV Squared for the linear side of things, but because of CTV, we're able to kind of do that match back that you were just talking about directly through the DSPs and CTV. So we have a sense of how that attribution, so they're kind of evaluated differently.
So a question for you then, you mentioned that linear, after X number of weeks, you're going to adjust a spot because you can see the rapid response so quickly. CTV is a little bit more of a longer game. What is that time frame, Carey, that you recommend? Is it 3 months, 6 months?
It's more weeks. I mean, I would say it's like 3 weeks, 4 weeks that we try to, and there's not as many things that you can pull like linear. There's hundreds of channels that you can work on, but with this we kind of look at either a little bit of data. We kind of look at we kind of dig into on the CTV. Where are we seeing the positivity from the response? And then we work with our partners on that side to make the tweaks. But it's less of being able to tell a client, oh, we've moved off of Lifetime and now we're moving it to OWN or TBS or something like that, where they kind of understand it. It's a little bit more under the hood as far as the optimizations that you're making, but they're still making.
Sure. I mean, it's an interesting channel, right? As we're learning more, the pure digital channels, you get instant, almost daily feedback, right? With click-throughs and the like. See, regular linear television is just a little bit longer, but it's within days. And then you have this new channel that's a blend of digital technology plus is kind of a TV sense. So it's its own time frame, I think, is yet to be discovered. And so with that, there are lots of people that are new coming into CTV that haven't tried it before. They're digital natives. So Tara, I'll ask you, when you have folks coming in that are new, clearly I would think, and if I'm wrong, please tell me, that you have to act as kind of coach a little bit or mentor to guide somebody into CTV. So it's a client, agency, or marketer. In what ways do you need to coach them into this channel?
Yeah, I always start with data. You need to tap into your first party data or find data to help, because data is key to finding these ideal audiences across CTV publishers. And then the next step would be data activation, because data activation then enables you or the brand to effectively implement data-driven decision-making across their entire marketing campaign. And the goal is to make data not only centrally available, but also actionable, empowering their teams to make informed decisions in real time. That's the beauty of CTV, is the ability to use this data. So data activation, would allow audience first planning, the ability to build campaigns around specific audience segments defined by behaviors, interests, and purchase intent. This helps ensure that these ads are seen by the right people at the right time. Then there's that real-time decision making, the ability to monitor the ad performance and audience trends in real time and adjust accordingly, your messaging and being able to adjust based on what's working, what's not, giving a brand, a marketer, an agency greater control over the impact of that campaign. There's content consideration, aligning these CTV investments with how your target audience consumes the content to make sure it's relevant and you're tailoring your messages, and then overall better ROI based on this data. Data activation allows brands to optimize spend, and the ability to digitally target. With this enables better engagement and greater ROI.
That's a great way to get started. That's a lot into it, and I think what's interesting is that, to kind of unpack what you said, there are different components that they need to think about as they start moving along, and I'm sure that they've got some, assumptions about CTV, about with all, they read a bunch of stuff, they talk to people. I guess, Matt, a question that I would ask you is, what is a misconception about CTV that you'd like to dispel, especially when it comes to attribution?
That it doesn't work. I remember sitting next to the executive vice president of MasterCard, and she opened our luncheon by explaining she's told her team to get out of CTV. It has not worked for her campaigns. And it killed me because we have really hurt ourselves in the digital advertising business. I love what Tara just said. It needs to be data-driven, of course, but I don't think we've gone through the right practices of, one, understanding, and two, executing on CTV for however long we've been talking about CTV. I think it's still a new opportunity, so there's still a wide open window here. But I think if it's set up, if we follow the analytics, it is an incredible opportunity. I think it's the best opportunity in all of media. And I told her that by the end of the lunch. And now we're seeing the results. So I could speak with conviction that, in fact, it is. As you study the attribution, you see how powerful it is. There's nothing better than sight, sound, and motion. We all knew that through all the years that we sold linear TV. But now that CTV is the future of linear TV, we're now getting the best of both worlds. We're getting the sight, sound, and motion. We're getting the emotional impact that you would get from linear, and we're getting the data. That it's truly the greatest marketing opportunity there is.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because when people first started Facebook, they're like, oh, it doesn't work. And then you had to figure out how to make it work. I still think that there's a lot of folks that aren't understanding, especially what Tara, yourself, and Carey have talked about in terms of the consideration of the new channel. It should deliver on the promise, like you said, of a more emotional message delivery, right? It's a video, it's like you said, the sight and sound, right? It's plus the targetability based on the data to the exact audience. So it should ostensibly be one of the highest performing media channels out there. And so I guess I'm going to ask this to everybody. Almost all marketers have a digital experience and familiar with how those channels measure and ultimately assign attribution. So I guess, Matt, we'll start with you and then we'll go around. So with CTV, do you think this will evolve to the place where it looks more like digital and less like linear or cable, or maybe both? I'm reminded of this goofy Frasier episode, which I don't know why I remember it, but I do, where it's the goofiest little thing. They're in this little wine club, and Frasier and Niles are competing to be the cork master. And so they have this wine that's a blend of Merlot and Cabernet, and they had to figure out, was it a 45% Merlot or 55% Cabernet, right? So I kind of think about like CTV, right? It's that blend of digital and linear and cable. What side do you think that it's going to be looking more like, or is it going to evolve completely differently between those two? Matt, we'll start with you.
Yeah, and I got into this business having sold Friends at Warner Brothers. So I worked on one of the biggest shows in the world, and I know we're never going to go back to that. We're never going to have that one hit show where 130 million households are going to rally around the TV and watch at the same time. But we are going to be creating hits for each of you as individuals. You know, there's going to be a hit that you're going to tune into at any given moment. And so the content is going to get better, and it's going to be tuned and targeted to you. So I'm excited about seeing the future of what those big hits of the past looked like being built singularly for you as an individual.
I like that. All right, Tara, you're up.
I think it's going to be a hybrid. I think there is a need for all of it, right? So Tubi is that lean back experience in terms of, I'm going to say reruns, but you know, sometimes you just don't want to think. You want to just relax and let the TV tell you what you're watching. Also with sports, so live sports was that last kind of category that was holding on to the broadcast, and now it is moving to streaming, right? The Olympics, Peacock, Netflix, Christmas Day, stuff like that. So I think it's going to continue to be a combination of what we as viewers like to do. So streaming viewership has already eclipsed both cable and broadcast TV in total viewing time. So it's not going anywhere. And I think that it's going to continue to be a combination, because for advertisers, CTV offers a powerful combination of what's great in digital, that digital precision, with the high impact of premium video content. So I feel like it's going to be that mix of Merlot and Cabernet, but to the perfect amount. And it's going to, you know, it provides the digital precision, but also there is that lean back experience. Sometimes you want sports moving to streaming. So I think it's not going anywhere. It's getting larger, and it's going to be that perfect mix of power for advertisers.
You know, it's so funny you mentioned that, because all the reports were like, oh, Netflix surges in December. It's like, because everybody was watching football on Netflix. It's why, right? It's still football, right? It's still football that brings the viewers. We can't escape it. So Carey, why don't you round us out, and especially from the perspective that I think our audience would love to hear is, when you're talking to clients about this media moving forward, this blend of digital and linear, how do you describe it?
Well, first of all, I think as this audience, as performance marketers, and utilizing what Tara and Matt both talked about, it's very true that you're going to have this miratage of everything coming together. But what I really love is that performance agencies like Modus, we've always been looking at the data, and kind of what Tara was saying, you know, kind of digging into, and what Matt was saying as far as what these technologies are able to bring to. We've always evaluated our media based on performance. And so it's just a great opportunity for us to roll up our sleeves and be able to kind of live in the world that we always have. And I think that as agencies, we're telling the clients, you know, this is a little bit different, and here is the roadmap to success for this part of media, just as and then the linear, as we're kind of balancing that and being able to provide the best kind of drink that you possibly can have, because that is what we've always done as performance marketers. It hasn't been the impression delivery as much. So that's where I think that it's really exciting for the people that are watching this, that agencies like ours are really already well suited for analyzing this new technology, because it isn't that new for us. It's just kind of another element to it, which makes us in a much stronger position than somebody that has been looking for the next Friends, where that's not going to happen, or the next Free, you know, sadly. So it's new, it's change, but that's what we always, you know, that's why I think we're all in this business, because we love the change. We love to be able to kind of have a new something to sell.
That's right. I like it. That's fantastic. So, Tom, we are at 11:25. We could be here for hours, but we've got to wrap this up. And I'm sure there are questions from the audience. So, what do you got?
Got a couple of really strong ones. So yeah, let's get to them. First one is for Matt. You have a reader out there, Matt. I recently read an article you wrote for the ANA where you touched on a tech tax that CTV buyers are subjected to. Those are the fees charged by DSPs, SSPs, verification services, and other supposedly essential tech stack components at each step of the ads journey. As a buyer, how can we avoid the tech tax?
Well, you can work with Blockboard. That's what we're.
That is a softball question.
No, I was gonna say thank you for the softball. But a lot of companies and agencies are going direct to those publishers to remove those. That is definitely an alternative way. It's going to be harder to scale, obviously, if you're going one by one, but that's another route that people are taking. And then two, I would just be really smart about who you partner with, and make sure you understand when you are getting taxed, how you are getting taxed, and what it really looks like. Very few clients are asking hard questions, and that's why they're getting hit with these. It's gotten out of control, unfortunately.
Great, great. Anyone else want to chip in there? Are we good?
You know,
I would just
I guess I would just, oh, go ahead, Tara.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chris. No, I would say though that when you're using tech, you're hopefully getting a better ROI and more effective, more targeted. So, used to put a spot and it would be, a large, broad audience. Now, you should be more cost effective in your media buys and be able to with targeting and data. So you should be spending less money to get more people, and then hopefully you have more money for tech.
Yeah, and I think to Matt's point though, if as a buyer, if you're not drilling into the line item and asking the questions, to me that's a little bit of an education gap, right? That they're still unused to what it looks like to negotiate or to work in this media. So to Matt's point, educating yourself.
Yeah.
Read his blog posts, read his articles, read stuff that's coming out from LiveRamp and from Modus, read about how they're talking about the industry, and learn as much as you can so you can be better prepared with questions when going in.
Great. So second question, it's a little bit of a toughie, and it shows that people are maybe reading our newsletter since we had this in our newsletter. Analyst Brian Weiser said in a new report this week that we're reaching a tipping point on the platform versus the planner. So the question is, how can human talent remain a part of the media process as this shift happens? Is there a pivot for media agencies? Maybe Carey, that's you first.
I'm sorry, so the pivot between, could you repeat that, sorry?
Is there a pivot that agencies can take when it appears that the platforms are gaining more importance than media planners at this point?
Okay, so yeah, I guess kind of to what Chris was just saying as far as experience goes, you kind of need to have your ad tech being kind of a set group of people that you have worked with that you can navigate this area as far as, and be comfortable and be educated on it. So, as far as a tipping point, I think it's more, I don't know if it's a tipping point, more if it's just going to continue to evolve. So nothing has ever changed. So, where there's a record scratch. So I think that as far as that goes, I just would say, be sure to ask the questions and with the people that you're working with, and make sure that you're dealing with people that can kind of go through the line items and across all the board, and really be able to explain the media that they're proposing and suggesting. That answers.
Great. Anyone else want to chime in? We good? I will say that Weiser is obviously a really well-respected analyst in this space, but Google did commission that study, just as a brief aside. So they might have a little bit in this game. So anyway.
And AI is going to definitely play a role in terms of figuring out an algorithm of, to Carey's point earlier, and actually Tara touched upon it, really, in terms of using the data to find that ideal audience with behavior, intent, web activity. My hunch is that someone somewhere is building an AI algorithm to try to figure out what CTV ads go right to the right person, taking in content, taking in frequency, and all that stuff. I still think, though, that, we know this to be true, and all digital marketers that have any experience in Facebook or Google or et cetera know this to be true. If you just throw your lot to the Facebook algorithm and you put a blindfold on and say, here, I'll trust Facebook to do it exactly for me, usually it doesn't perform as well as it does if you've got a human intervention, right? If you've got some type of experience, if you've got some type of, not just business acumen, but there's a an insight that a human being will naturally have versus something that's artificially created through an algorithm. That I always think is going to be an important element in proving out successes or failures, or making a mediocre campaign, much better and perform at a stronger rate.
Yeah, it's always going to be a tool. I mean, it's like digital marketing to begin with. It was something where it's not going to just do it without the people sitting there with a brain and being able to kind of point you in the right direction. And there are times where, the data works, but then sometimes you want to cast a wider net and not necessarily just go with that exact person that you think it is, because you might be wrong. And you're not going to find that out. And you're not going to be able to grow if you don't really cast a wider net and kind of think differently than what the algorithms are always saying.
Yeah, makes
It
sense.
could be huge mistakes too. Speaking of Warner Brothers, I worked on the Warner Brothers business for years, and when we used like a data product for a movie, Chips, I think the movie was, and it put us in like the Special Olympics or something that was really not right for the film. And that for sensitive content, that could it could be a big mistake for a company, that gets garners very, very negative attention. So human touch is required, even with data.
Great.
Well, thank you all, Carey, Tara, Matt, Chris. Amazing work again. If you missed any of this, folks, it'll be on our YouTube channel by Friday, so you can go back and take a look then. Our next Take 20 episode is set for 2 weeks from today, Wednesday, February 19th, and we'll continue our Hot Categories series, featuring a look at the tort and legal marketing sector. Please visit thepdmi.com/take-20 to register and to check out the upcoming schedule and online registration for PDMI East. The association's Spring 2025 event at Eden Rock, Miami Beach continues. We have 4 faces on the screen who have been on stage at a past event and are at least likely possibly to be on stage at this event. So it'd be great to have you there. Badges are $3.95 for PDMI members and $5.95 for non-members. When you get your badge for the event, which is April 7th through 9th, you'll also immediately receive the link to book your discounted hotel room at the Eden Rock. Our rates are now about 45% lower than the Eden Rock's listed rates. So get your badge and get your room. thepdmi.com/PDMI-East is the place. We'll see you again soon. Thanks again for checking out this episode of PDMI's Take 20. Be well. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.